we're going to be looking at different idioms related to time. So the first one we're going to have a look at is ahead of one's time. So we use this when we want to say that something is in advance of currently accepted ideas. So when an idea, a project, an innovation has occurred or developed before it was meant to develop or occur. So we could say it was ahead of its time. An example of this would be, our president was able to strengthen our nation's economy with his policies and has always been ahead of his time. So this is the perfect example that we can use for this. So here we've got an image, 2015 AD, he was truly ahead of his time. It's tragic how nobody understands an artist until long after they die. So here they're using it to talk about this famous painting, how it was ahead of its time. The next one we're looking at is a matter of time. So a matter of time, whenever we use this expression, it means that something will certainly happen. It's just a matter of time before this thing will happen. An example of this would be, there's no way he will stay at the company. He hates his boss. It's just a matter of time before he quits his job. Guys, what you can do is send me via the chat, the live chat, send me some examples that you want to create. All right, next one. Any minute now. Also means any second, any moment, any time now. Means very soon. Example, he told me he was 1 minute away, so he should be arriving any time now or any moment now. This is what you would use when you want to do something very, very soon. To beat the clock, to do something before the deadline or the time that something needs to be completed. So to beat the clock, to beat something means to win against it, to beat it. So to beat the clock is when you're trying to win the time against the clock. An example would be, I tried to beat the clock to work this morning, but I still managed to arrive 10 minutes late. Okay, so I tried to beat the clock, but it wasn't possible. I tried to do something earlier than I was meant to, but I still wasn't able to. Call it a day. So this is when you want to relax after work. All right, it hits 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever time you clock off from work. So when you say, I'm going to call it a day, it means you're going to stop working for the rest of the day. I'm calling it a day and now I'm going to drink some juice and relax. An example of this is Alex was so exhausted from working all week that he called it a day and went home at 3 p.m. All right, so we've got this image here. This guy has called it a day. Caught in a time warp. To remain unchanged from a time in the past, although everything else has changed. So it's when you're kind of stagnant, you're stuck in a position or in a place and you're not moving. Another way to say this idiom is to be stuck in a time warp or to be in a time warp. So there's 3 different ways we can say it with 3 different verbs. An example of how you could use this is, my grandma seems to be caught in a time warp. She doesn't know how to use anything electronic. All right. So you could use this for someone who's older than you, someone who is from a different generation, or someone who's just stuck in their ways and they don't want to change. All right, the next one we've got is clock on and clock off. All right, so then we've got clock on and clock off. Clock on means to register your arrival time at work. Clock off means to register your departure from work. So clock on, clock off. Whenever you start work, you clock on. So let's say 9 o'clock in the morning, I clock on at 9. And anytime you stop work, 5 o'clock or 6 p.m. is the typical time, you clock off. Example, at my company, we have to clock on and clock off each day to ensure that there are no attendance issues. All right, so here we've got this system where people clock on. They might put their finger, or they might put in some digits to log on, but this is how you would say clock on and clock off. Every minute. So this is when you want to describe the whole period that something lasted. Every minute. An example, I enjoyed every minute of the wedding. We had so much fun dancing and chatting with everyone. So it's when you want to describe that the entire period was something that lasted. The entire period was great. Guys, make sure to send me some of your examples for these idioms that we're learning. So don't forget to send them to me. All right, to have time on your hands. This means to have extra time. An example of this would be, if you have any time on your hands, could you please help me with my speech? It will only take 30 minutes. So this is a really good example if you want to ask someone to help you out, if you want to ask someone if they've got enough time, or if they've got some time to spare to help you, you can use, do you have some time on your hands? Or have you got any time on your hands? In a split second. This means in a very short period of time. In a very short period of time, so in a very small period of time where there's maybe a minute, sometimes seconds. So as you can see in this photo, in a split second, this accident can happen. So an example here, in a split second, the dog ran in front of the car and the accident happened. In a split second. So you close your eyes, you open your eyes, and then immediately something has changed. To kill time. This is a really good one. When you're bored or when you don't have much to do, you look for different activities to kill time. So to spend some time doing nothing productive, just like, maybe some shopping, some walking, chatting with friends, just so that you can kill time. So let's pretend you've got a doctor's appointment at 4 p.m. and you arrive there at 3 p.m. You have 1 hour where you're going to kill time. You might speak to your family, speak to your friends, go on social media. So this period where you're not really doing anything is called kill time. For example, I had nothing to do, so I decided to walk around the city to kill time. Okay? Just so that I don't do anything. So now I have a question for you guys, and I'm going to put it in the chat. What do you do to kill time? So I want you guys to answer me using the idiom kill time. So what do you do to kill time? Do you go on YouTube? Do you practice your English? Do you speak to some friends? Do you play a game? Do you go for a walk? What do you do when you want to kill time? Comment in the chat so that I know. Let's see. So I chat with my friends to kill time. Roberto, normally I play online poker to kill time. Perfect. This is a really good example. This is a great example of how you can kill time. All right, send some others, guys. There's 6 of you here, so I want to hear from every single one of you. All right. I'll continue to check them, but we'll move on to the next idiom. Pressed for time. This means you are in a hurry or you don't have time. You're pressed for time. The word pressed is something that is put under pressure. It's closed or it's kind of put together, so it's pressed. So when you're pressed for time, you have a limited amount of time. You're short on time. An example of this could be, her flight is at 2 p.m. tomorrow, so she is pressed for time and is trying to organize everything before then. All right, so she is pressed for time because she doesn't have a lot of hours between now and tomorrow. She's pressed for time. So guys, when are you pressed for time? Are you pressed for time when you're working? So when are you pressed for time? When working? Could it be when you're traveling? When you're driving to work? Sometimes when we're driving to work, if there's a lot of traffic, we're pressed for time. Sometimes if a meeting has gone on for too long, then we have another meeting after it, we become pressed for time, so we don't have time to eat, go to the bathroom, do anything else. Let me know in the chat, when are you pressed for time? It could be early in the morning when you're coming back from the gym. Maybe you go to the gym in the morning and you're coming back home and you're rushing to have a shower and get dressed because you're pressed for time, because you need to clock on, so we're using that idiom, clock on at 9 a.m. for work. So maybe you're pressed for time when you need to clock on. All right, the next one, rough time. So a rough time, when one is having a bad or difficult time. Notice here, O-U-G-H. This makes an UF sound when we put an R in front of it. So rough, okay? Rough means difficult, bad, and in this instance, a rough time. So an example here is, he is getting a divorce and going through, so going through is experiencing, and going through a rough time. So he's going through a difficult period. I'm going through a rough time. She is having a rough time. Okay. Next one. Time flies. Time flies. This is a really good expression. This is a very common expression in English. And I want you guys to give me an example using time flies. Okay, so I want you to put the example in the chat. But before you do that, I'm going to explain what time flies means. When time goes by very quickly, in English we say, wow, time flies. So the perfect example of this is, now that we're in 2023, We can look back at 2022 and say, wow, 2022 went by so quickly. Time flies. So that's like a really good example. When you want to say that the period between when something happened till now has gone by very quickly, you can say time flies. An example of this could be, it amazes me how quickly time flies when you are having a good time. So it amazes me how quickly time flies when you are having a good time. Give me an example using time flies. So my example is time flies when I'm working. What's an example you can give me? Maybe it could be, when I'm at the gym, time flies by. So, when I'm at the gym, time flies by. What's another one, guys? Let's see. Who's going to give us a sentence using time flies? So you can see from this image here, it's a good demonstration of how we're trying to catch time as it's disappearing from us. All right. So, let's get to the end part here. So we've got an exercise and we've got a bit of a revision. When I am with you, time flies. Perfect. I'm sure this is a song. I feel like this is a song. Right, Roberto? This must be a song, or it must be a poem that you've written to someone. All right. So, good work. Yeah, there you go. Exactly. It's a very common expression. Time flies when you're having fun. This is a very common expression. I'll actually write it for you guys here. Time flies when you're having fun. It's kind of similar to that first one here. Time flies when you're having fun. All right. Now, last exercise. It's a little bit challenging, but it's a really good way to revise the idioms that we've learnt. So, just a really quick tip, whenever you're learning idioms, it's really good that you revise them and actually start using them in your conversations, in your meetings. Anytime you're speaking in English, try to incorporate them if possible, because the best way for you to remember them and to know how to use them in the right way is through practice. So I think it's really good if we can do that here in this lesson. And what we're going to do is you have 1 minute, so I will time it for you guys. You will have 1 minute to come up with a story using as many of these time idioms as possible. So we've got ahead of one's time, a matter of time, any minute now, beat the clock, call it a day, caught in a time warp, clock on and clock off, every minute, have time on your hands, in a split second, kill time, pressed for time, rough time, and time flies. So let me give you an example. An example that I would use using these time idioms is, let's say, today at work I clocked on at 9 a.m. And I enjoyed every minute of my day because it was very interactive and very productive day, because one of my colleagues had time on his hands and he was able to help me because I was pressed for time. So in order for him to kill time, he decided to help me out, and we were able to finish everything in a matter of seconds. Then I clocked off at 5 p.m. and I called it a day. Okay? So I used as many time idioms as I could off the top of my head so that I could give you guys an example. Now I want you guys to use as many of these time idioms as you can to give me a very short story using these time idioms. All right, so I'll give you a minute to plan for it, and then after that minute, start sending it through the live chat. Okay? And while you guys are creating it, I'm also going to write mine. All right, so I've sent you guys my example, and I've used clocked on, pressed for time, time flew by, clocked off, and called it a day. Okay, so I've used 5 to 6 time idioms. Send through yours and I will have a look at them in the live chat. Let's see what you guys come up with. All right. It's a little bit challenging, but it's a really good exercise that will train you to start using idioms instead of regular words, because idioms are super popular, super important, and very commonly used as well. We use them a lot, and native English speakers don't even realize that they're speaking using idioms. You know, it's just part of our everyday conversation. So it can be challenging when you're learning English or when you're trying to speak English with a native speaker and they start using these idioms. It can be challenging for you guys to understand them. So this is why I think learning the idioms and putting them into practice is highly effective and it's probably the best way for you guys to remember them, because it's hard to memorize all the idioms, right? If you're not practicing them, it's very hard to remember them. So my advice is to simply just, whenever you can, try and use them. Now that you've learnt these ones, it's a really great way to use them in your conversations. Even in casual emails, in informal messages, it would be really great for you guys to practice using them. And the great thing about writing is, like, when you're writing an email, you've got a bit of time to think. So you can go in and just double check that you've used it correctly. You can Google that idiom to see how it's used in other examples and then apply it. All right. Guys, let me know if you've got any questions for me about any of these idioms or about the live lesson as well. So let me know. Any questions, send them through the live chat. I'd love to hear from you guys. And before we head off, it would be really great if you guys could also, just in the description box, I've put a form in there. I would love for you guys to fill it out. Fill out this form, answer the questions in there, and I would really appreciate it, because it would give me some really great feedback from you guys about these lessons and how we can improve them as well. And also check out my website, hannaak.com. Follow me on Instagram. I have some really great tips on there. I'm always updating it daily with 1 or 2 videos a day, with phrasal verbs, common mistakes that English learners make, grammar tips, and new phrases for you to learn as well. And you can also follow me on Facebook as well. I've put the link in there for you guys. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next Tuesday, same time at 3 p.m. All right. Thank you.